As one lifelong American diplomat wrote in 2018, a fascist, quote, is someone who claims to speak for a whole nation or group, is utterly unconcerned with the rights of others, and is willing to use violence and whatever other means are necessary to achieve the goals he or she might have. That quote comes from a book called Fascism, A Warning. I'm joined now by its author, Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State under President Bill Clinton, whose newest book is Hell and Other Destinations, a 21st Century memoir. Ambassador Albright, Secretary Albright, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. You wrote those words in 2018, and it is remarkable to me that this president carries on about Antifa and fascist groups when, in fact, the dispatch of federal agents who are not sworn to do the things that they are doing are going into cities over and above the requests of governors and mayors and arresting protesters, which is the basis of the history of America. This country was founded on protests, some of it violent, actually. This looks a lot like fascism.
Well, first, thank you very much for inviting me. And I am speechless at the way that you have described things, which is really putting together the facts in a very, very good and compelling way. I did write a book, and it was a warning. And I do think the following thing is that fascism has taken place slowly in a number of countries, step by step. And I am concerned about the things that are going on here in terms of authoritarian measures. What it begins, by the way, fascism is not an ideology. It's a process for gaining power. And it does begin by exacerbating differences among people and setting one group against another, calling the press the enemy of the people by somebody who thinks he's above the law. And so I do think it's important to point out that it's a step-by-step process. And by the way, the best quote in the book is actually from Mussolini, who says, if you pluck a chicken one feather at a time, nobody notices. So I've been concerned about all the feather plucking that has been going on. And I do think it's important to call it out. And for a president and an administration that calls itself law and order, they have broken the law and are creating disorder. And that is what you described and what we have to deal with. And it makes you not trust any institutions. And so I am very concerned about what's going on, and that dreams can turn into nightmares.
Are you concerned that in the history of America, some of the most staunch defenders of our liberal democracy, small L liberal democracy, and our rights and our protection against tyranny of the government have been conservatives? Are you surprised at why we are not hearing outrage from more Republicans about what's going on in the streets of America?
I'm definitely outraged because I do think that this is an unbelievable time in America, and it's important for those who care about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence to understand what democracy is based on. And it is based on the fact that one tells the truth, that we have the obligation and the privilege to vote, and we have the privilege to tell it like it is. And I think that what you've been doing, and I think that we need to keep really pointing out the kinds of insane things, frankly, that are taking place in terms of troops going into cities. And what's very interesting, I just saw a statement by the spokesman for the Pentagon, is that the Secretary of Defense is concerned about troops in camouflage going into cities. And I think that we have to speak out against this.
Defense Secretary Esper's days may be numbered, given that it is leaked that he is concerned about this. One of the other issues, and we think about this a lot since the passing of John Lewis on Friday night, and all the videos that we see of the 1960s and the things that we were doing then that we know were wrong. What we were doing in the 1960s in this country is we were quelling protest. We were beating people. We cracked John Lewis's skull during a peaceful protest. I've been out in these protests since the death of George Floyd. They are overwhelmingly peaceful, but regardless, even those that are not, the president has painted protest itself as un-American. As someone who represented America around the world, our right and defense of protest is one of those things that separated us from the rest of the world. No longer, but it was one of those things that was the standard of America, that protest is inherently American.
I fully agree, and it is what democracies should allow and must allow. And I do think, having watched a lot of the ones that were taking place in Lafayette Square or really on Black Lives Matter Plaza, that was peaceful. And I think that it is the deliberate aspect of really forcing people in order to disobey the law. I mean, it's crazy. The adjectives or the nouns that are being used about those who are peacefully protesting, and then the way that it is being stopped is un-American. And that is what really bothers me. You know, I was not born in this country, and I describe myself as a grateful American. This is not the America that we need to be really understanding now and dealing with what is truly the systemic racism that's been going on, and that there has to be a better effort by those of us who care about democracy and voting to call it out and not be put down by those who call us other names.